Welcome to the Deep Dive. Look, you're here because you want to get smart fast. And today we're doing just that. We're really zeroing in on what makes a moral argument, well, convincing.
Yeah, and we've got some really interesting material to work with. There's this one reflection. It uses a pretty simple image, actually.
Right, the three-legged stool idea.
Exactly. To explore how our society's foundations, the big structures connect to wealth, and importantly, our sense of morality.
It's quite a compelling image. An economic stool, you called it.
That's the term used, yeah. Politics, religion, and the military are the three legs. The argument is that these societal pillars are just deeply intertwined with our economic systems.
And because of that connection, they end up having a huge impact on our collective sense of right and wrong.
A profound impact, absolutely.
Okay, so this economic stool, politics, religion, military, let's break that down. When we talk about our material world, what do these legs actually represent? How do they work together?
Well, think of it like this. Politics, that leg sets the ground rules for the economy.
Okay, like who owns what? Debt. Big decisions.
Exactly. Ownership, debt, decision-making power, the fundamentals. Then you have religion that provides, or is supposed to provide, a kind of moral framework for all that economic activity.
Like what's okay and what's not okay when it comes to money. Earning it, spending it, sharing it.
Precisely. The ethical dimension.
Yeah.
And the third leg, the military. Well, its role is often to protect those economic interests.
Protect, and sometimes expand them, historically speaking.
Yes, that too. It acts as the sort of enforcement or defense mechanism for the economic structure built by the other two legs.
So it's this interplay. Rules, values, and enforcement all tied together. Okay, so where's the potential for this system to, go off the rails morally? What are the risks?
Well, the risk really ramps up when the main focus of these institutions becomes overwhelmingly about material gain. Just more stuff, more power.
How so? Give me an example.
Okay, take politics. Political systems can become, let's say, heavily influenced by wealthy groups.
Right. Lobbying, campaign finance.
Things like that, yeah. Which can lead to laws, maybe tax policies, or deregulation that end up benefiting those groups more than, say, the general public good.
Okay, that makes sense. And religion.
Religion's complex. Many faiths champion justice and fairness, absolutely. But doctrines can sometimes be interpreted or even twisted to justify existing inequalities, to sort of bless the status quo, even if it's unfair.
Or uphold the wealth of the powerful.
And the military, well, in that role of protecting economic interests, it can get drawn into conflicts that aren't just about defense, but about exploitation or domination.
Interesting. So the problem isn't necessarily the legs themselves. Politics, religion, military?
No, not inherently. It's more about the intent driving them. When that driving force becomes pure materialism, that's when the stool starts supporting, well, exploitation and moral decay, according to this reflection.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. The idea that this large-scale societal dynamic, it might actually mirror what happens inside us as individuals when we chase after wealth. What's that connection?
The reflection suggests that our own, sometimes obsessive, drive to accumulate more and more wealth. It could actually be a symptom.
A symptom of what?
Of something deeper, a kind of spiritual or moral unease. See, in many modern societies, success gets boiled down almost entirely to how much stuff we have.
Right, your possessions define you, in a way.
Yeah. But this piece argues that maybe that constant chase for more isn't always about meeting real needs. Maybe it's an attempt to fill some kind of internal emptiness.
Like trying to plug a spiritual hole with material goods.
Exactly. A hole that ultimately money and possessions can't ever really fill.
There's that striking image it uses. The person with this huge, beautiful cake. It represents everything they need. Sustenance, even joy.
Right. More than...
But instead of enjoying it, understanding they have enough, they just keep consuming it mindlessly, endlessly.
Until the whole thing collapses. Not from lack, but from sheer overconsumption, from not knowing when to stop.
Wow, that metaphor. It really lands on a few levels, doesn't it?
It does. On the individual level, you can see how someone might get so focused on getting rich that they neglect the things that actually nourish them. Relationships, health, purpose.
The real stuff.
Yeah. And then scale that up to society. This same insatiable hunger for more can lead to things like, trashing the environment for resources.
Exploiting natural resources, yeah.
Or communities fraying because profit becomes the only goal. Or even families suffering because work demands everything.
So the core issue isn't just having wealth, it's the failure to recognize sufficiency, not knowing what's truly enough.
That seems to be the heart of the argument.
Okay, so if the problem is this failure to recognize enough, what's the proposed solution? What does true wealth actually look like according to this view?
True wealth, in this context, isn't about hoarding endless possessions. It's defined as understanding and, importantly, honoring what the reflection calls the threshold of sufficiency.
The threshold of sufficiency, what does that mean in practice?
Think of it as like the sweet spot, where you have real security but without wasteful excess, where your ambition is still there, but it's tempered by compassion.
And where having things leads naturally to sharing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about having enough food, but not tons of waste. A comfortable home, not necessarily a palace. A job that fulfills you without destroying your life outside it. It's finding that balance point.
That feels like a pretty radical shift from how things often operate now.
Yeah.
Our whole economy often feels geared towards constant growth. More, more, more.
It does. More is better is almost the default setting.
So how on earth would we even start thinking about reorienting these massive institutions, politics, religion, the military, towards this idea of enough, of sufficiency? That seems like a huge undertaking.
It definitely requires courage. The reflection is clear on that. You have to be willing to question powerful interests, challenge beliefs that have been around forever.
And push back against that constant cultural message that more is always the goal.
Right. It means reimagining what these institutions are for. What's their fundamental purpose? But the fascinating part is thinking about the potential if we could make that shift. The transformation could be profound.
And it paints a pretty vivid picture of what that might look like, especially with the military example. Instead of armies primarily for war.
Right. Imagine them mobilized to preserve life, using those incredible logistics and discipline for things like drilling wells in drought-stricken areas or building homes after disasters, delivering critical aid.
Redirecting all that power towards humanitarian goals.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? And the vision extends beyond just the military. It describes a kind of transformed world, a modern Xanadu, it calls it.
Where the big global fights aren't over territory anymore.
Exactly. But over these huge existential challenges we all face. Things like climate resilience, access to clean water, food security for everyone, fair education, even digital sovereignty.
And it talks about the armies of tomorrow being made up of healers and builders.
And education focusing on cooperation, not just competition. An economy measured not just by GDP, but by something like gross human flourishing.
And leadership being about inspiring people, lifting them up, not just controlling them.
It's a fundamentally different vision of how society could function, rooted in this idea of sufficiency.
So bringing this back to you, the listener, connecting all these dots, it really pushes us to think about what actually lasts, doesn't it?
Absolutely, because the reflection makes a stark point. All the material wealth we gather, it's temporary.
Can't take it with you.
Right. Death is the great equalizer, as they say. What's left behind isn't the bank balance, it's the legacy. How we lived, what we gave back, how we treated the resources, people, planet we had access to.
So living wisely in this framework isn't about maximizing possessions. It's about knowing the difference between wealth and, well, worth, true value.
And maybe finding peace at the end comes from feeling like you left the world, even in a small way, better in spirit.
Only then, the piece concludes, does that three-legged stool, politics, religion, military, actually support something enduring, something truly worthwhile.
Which leads to a final thought maybe for you to chew on. Thinking about this threshold of sufficiency, what does enough actually look like in your own life?
That's a big question.
It is, and maybe bigger still.
Yeah.
How might our society really change if we collectively started shifting away from just chasing more and towards a deeper grasp of what sufficiency and real wealth mean? Something to ponder.